Head to Showtime Sports Cards and Collectibles, the sponsor of the Pete Prisco Report for the longest time now. All right, Pete, bad news hit yesterday. Travis Hunter gone for at least 4 weeks with a knee injury sustained in practice. How much does that affect the Jaguars in this football game, in your opinion?
Well, I think it affects him a great way because they were going to make him the focal point of the offense. And he was going to play a lot more defense. And so when you lose a guy like that, it's a big hit. And, it sounds, just reading through the tea leaves, it sounds like it might be longer than 4 weeks, and it might be more severe than that. So it's a bad blow because the kid was just starting to reach his potential, and they were starting to turn him loose a little bit. And I think this was a week they were really going to turn him loose. So it's tough. I mean, what do? I mean, what needs to happen? Brian Thomas needs to become the player that they thought he would become. That's the number one priority. People keep asking me. They say, well, who takes over? Who's going to fill a spot? Well, Brian Thomas has to be that guy. And they, this week it sounds like they talked with him and had good moments with him, and it sounds like he was focused and ready to go. So we'll see. He needs to become that number one wide receiver.
Pete, how dangerous do you think the Raiders are?
Not very. Look, they have individual stars. Brock Bowers, who's back, can be a star. I think Max Crosby can ruin games. But you look over the roster, and it's not a great roster. So I don't think they're a really good team because Geno Smith hasn't played that well either. But you're going into their place. They're coming off a bye just like you are. And they didn't lose, Travis Hunter. They're getting guys back. And so it's going to be a tough game. But I don't think that's a really good football team at all. And it's a game Jacksonville should win. I said this last week. You were there, but Frank was out last week. But I said this last week. I said, I think these 2 weeks are big for Liam Cohn. Getting your team through a bye week after 2 losses, dealing with a lot of the problems, the pre-snap penalties, the not catching the football, the bust in the secondary at times. I think it's a real challenge for him. And I think this is going to define who he is a little bit as a head coach. And I think he's a good one, by the way. And I think he's handled it the last couple weeks really well leading into the game. But you got to win that game this week.
Yeah, very, very big game. Back to the Raiders, one quick point. How has the Pete Carroll thing been received? Like, it's his first year, and the team's not very good, so that can't be on him. But do they feel like that's going to work, Pete? What's kind of the narrative there?
Well, they committed to Geno Smith, and he's been a part of the problem.
Right.
I mean, they decided that Geno Smith was their guy, and all of a sudden he's not playing the way they thought he would play. And when your quarterback doesn't play that well, you're going to have problems moving the football. I mean, they got shut out at Kansas City. Shut out, nothing. I don't think they moved across the Chiefs' 45 that day. And so, Geno Smith's the problem right now, and he's got to pick up his player. They're going to be going back into the quarterback pool next year.
Looking at the Jaguars' defense coming out of the bye, what are your expectations for that unit?
Is the club off?
Kinda. He's got fingers, I think, that he'll be able to, so it's still.
It's not.
I guess it's
better. It's not going to be completely off.
Yeah.
Well, because with the full club, he couldn't play. I mean, he couldn't grab guys. It was, as good and powerful as he is, and he was able to, on a loop the other day in the last game, he was able to get a little bit of push by running over the guard, but you can't grab and rip and throw guys to the ground. It's hard to play defensive end in this league. So if he can grab with that hand now, then I think it really impacts their defense in a big way. And they need him. I mean, he's a good player. You find out what your defense is when you lose a player like that in terms of not him being 100%. Give him credit for going out there and playing, but they need him on the field being a disruptor, being sound against the run, holding up at the point. I think if he can use his hand, then I think their defense is significantly better.
Pete, so we're 7 games in now, and I wasn't here with you last week. Last time I was here, we were kind of reviewing the Rams thing. We're 7 games in; they're 4-3. I think it's been a tough schedule. I think the last 4 games they're 2-2 against I think a bunch of good teams. How do you feel about them? I mean, we look up, are the Jags going to be a 10 or 11 win team? Is it going to be less or more? The state of the union about the Jags from your vantage point.
Well, I think if you said before the season you'd be 4-3 with a home win against the Chiefs and a road win against the 49ers, you would have signed up for it.
Right.
But I think the way it happened and the fact that you were where you were a couple of weeks ago before going on the road, then, before losing the home game and then going on the road, I think that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and they got to get it out of it by going and winning and winning convincingly, by the way, against the Raiders. I think you have to show well there. But I think, Frank, you talk about it, that the offense has been inconsistent. I think the passing game has been woefully inconsistent. The quarterback hasn't played as well as expected. The wide receivers have dropped a bunch of passes. They don't seem to get in a rhythm. The running game was good early. They got away from it. The offensive line, each guy has had moments where he hasn't been very good. And then you go to the other side of the ball. I mean, you've had flashes of guys making plays, but nobody's getting anybody on the ground. We love to talk about pressures, but nobody's getting anybody on the ground. The linebackers have made some big plays. The safeties, particularly Wingard, the last couple of games has been awful, and that's been a problem. So how would I give them a grade for being where they are right now? Probably based on the talent and how people have played, it's probably an A coaching job, because I don't think they play that well. But I think where they are as a team, it's probably a B minus, maybe B minus.
Can the Jags gain a game on the Colts this weekend? How do you think Indianapolis will fare going to Pittsburgh?
Oh, I don't think that Steelers' old man defense is very good, and that Colts offense is really good. I think the Colts will go in there and win that game. I mean, you look at that Steelers defense, my gosh, they're the highest paid defense in the league and the second oldest, and they play more like the second oldest defense in the league than they do the highest paid defense in the league. You look, TJ Watt, the same guy? No. Cam Hayward, not the same guy. You go to the back end, there's so much age back there. Ramsey, Slay, Chuck Clark, Elliott, who's hurt now, but I mean, they got age back there, and it shows up. So I think the Steelers are in trouble. That Colts team is legitimate, and a big, we always talk about Jonathan Taylor, great player. Reminds me of Fred Taylor, by the way. Not as fast, but reminds me of Fred Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor, and we talk about Daniel Jones' resurgence, but what we lose sight of is the fact how good their offensive line is playing. They made changes on that line. Kelly and Freeze left via free agency. They put Bortolini and Conclaves in. All of a sudden, the line's better. I mean, they're mauling people. The holes are enormous. They're protecting the quarterback. Steichen's doing a great job calling plays. They're legitimate on offense. Defensively, I'm not so sure, but when you play with the lead, it's a lot easier to play defense.
Pete, why are the Colts as good as they are?
The Colts?
Yeah.
Well, because I think the running game and the offensive line.
Yeah.
I worry about I'll be honest with you guys. I worry a little bit about the secondary. I think they're beatable back there. You can make some plays against them. But when you play with the lead in the NFL,
yeah.
I mean, when you play with the lead, you're going to be able to turn pass rushers loose, and they can do that. It makes it easy to play defense, and they score a lot of points. Now, having said all that about, making the Colts into the, greatest show on turf, as people like to do nowadays and rush things, they haven't exactly played a murderer's row of a schedule either. I mean, they beat up on the Dolphins, the Titans, the Raiders, who else? The Cardinals without Murray. I mean, the Titans again. They haven't exactly beat up on a bunch of good teams. So I'm still concerned about level of competition. Go out on the road against a really good team and show me you can go win the game with your quarterback late in the game, and I'll be more of a big believer than I am right now.
Let me get to the NFC for a second. Who's got your attention? I mean, obviously the Eagles are 6-2. That really good NFC North, that really good NFC West. They've got two really good divisions there. Who's got your attention in that conference?
The Packers. We haven't seen. I picked them before the season. We haven't seen the best of them yet. We're starting to, and they're getting guys back healthy. Getting Christian Watson back changes the entire offense. He's a field stretcher. When you have a field stretcher, it opens up everything else. You saw that the other night. He gets in the lineup, goes down the field, catches some balls down the field. Well, who feasts off of that? Tucker Kraft, who might be one of the best receiving tight ends in the league now. And then they didn't even get anything out of Golden last week, and he was starting to emerge. You got Dobbs. You got all kinds of guys that you can do things with. The line is bigger and stronger than it's ever been, and they're good players. They're starting to play well together, and Love is really starting to play well together. If you get playing with those receivers, if you start getting a lead, then you can turn and hand the ball off to Jacobs, who's a tough inside runner. And defensively, when you have a lead, what do they have? They have Gary. They have Parsons. They have guys that go attack the quarterback. So I think that team is the one to keep an eye on. They play the Eagles in 2 weeks. On a Monday night, we'll know a lot more about both those teams in that game.
I think one of the most intriguing games Sunday is Denver at Houston. How do you see that one playing out?
It's interesting because that offensive line last week against San Francisco didn't give up a sack for the Texans. And Stroud sat back there without Nico Collins and picked them apart. And we know they're good on defense. So I think that's going to be whichever offense can find some kind of life against those really good defenses is going to be the one to win it. I mean, Denver, to me, a couple weeks ago, they beat the Giants, but had no business winning that game at home. And then they go and, get a big blowout victory last week against a bad Cowboys team. And Bo Nix started to play well. If Bo Nix plays well, Denver's good. If Bo Nix is inconsistent, which we've seen throughout this season, Denver's going to have problems. And so it'll be interesting to see Denver's offense against the Texans' defense and the Texans' offense against that Denver defense.
Final thing, Pete. Jags play the Raiders. We talked about it a moment ago. No Travis Hunter, still no Brenton Strange, still a team that's beat up a little bit. The Raiders are getting some folks back. They play in Las Vegas on Sunday. Who do you like in the game?
I think Jacksonville's going to win that game. I think Liam Cohen's going to have his team ready to play. And I think Trevor Lawrence is going to play better than he's played so far this season. The Raiders' defense, it's been, better than anticipated. They're about 15th, middle of the pack. But I think it's all because of Crosby. So do everything you can to take Crosby out of the game. You'll have success. You got to chip him, double him, whatever you got to do, take him out of the game, and you'll have success against that defense. And I think Cohen will figure out a way to take him away. And I think Trevor Lawrence will have a big day. I think Brian Thomas shows up on Sunday.
I do too.
I really do. I think he does. I think this is the moment. He had 2 weeks to stew. He's heard everybody rip it on him, and I think he probably did some self evaluation and self-grading, and he said, you know what, I'm better than I've shown, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show it.
I think the same thing. I think he's going to, and obviously now the targets he might not have been going to get 2 days ago, he's going to get now. So I think you're exactly right. Pete Prisco, check it in from CBSSports.com. Pete, thanks, buddy.
Hey, y'all, Lauren Brooks here. Thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and check out all of our great videos and channels on the 1010XL network.